name's James McCool, and welcome to another edition of Community Conversations. This is going to be the second episode in this series where I'm mostly just talking about things that we talk about in the community Discord over at Paydirt. So, I'm the owner of PaydirtDFS.com. You can find me on Twitter at Paydirt_DFS. I always mess up these intros. So anyway, you guys know who I am. You subscribe to the channel, and today we're going to be talking about some fun little research topics that I think are generally silly. The difference between silly research and kind of good research, I guess. And it was sparked by somebody talking about pitch type research, right? So that's mostly what this is going to revolve around. And I have a nice little visual that I'll show you guys a little bit later that demonstrates the point that I'm trying to make here. So without any issue on that, let's just jump right into it. So if you watch the last community conversations, which is going to be in this this playlist thing on YouTube, I talked a lot about research, and I talked a lot about time investment, and I talked a lot about how you need to be utilizing your time correctly in order to make sure that your expected value and your ROI over a longer term is not lessened by the amount of time that you're taking. Likewise, the amount of time that you're taking when you're doing research, a lot of that research is already baked into models. So that community conversations was kind of more based on things that are worth researching, right? So that was kind of based on if you're looking at teams and how well they do against right-handed pitching, or if you're looking at teams how well they're doing against, or like at home or away or stuff like that. You know, that stuff is already baked into models. So that kind of research, it can be good, it can be helpful if it's not already included in the models and you feel that you need to look at it. Or if you don't have a subscription service that you're looking at and you don't have projections and models that are already done for you, then yeah, you want to look at that kind of thing. Today is going to be more centered around things that you probably shouldn't be researching and something that people look at anyway because they think that it's cool and they think that it makes them seem really smart or something. And I guess it's not everybody that's like that, but I know a couple people and a couple different people in the industry who have done it to like seem really smart, and it's just convoluted. So what spurred this is in the Discord we were talking about I think that it was the Pittsburgh Pirates. They were going up against a pitcher who throws primarily sliders, right? So this pitcher has a 52% usage rate of his slider, considerably less of his fastball. And those are really the only two pitches that he mostly throws. He just throws a slider and a fastball. So the conversation was brought up because somebody was saying, oh, well, Daniel Vogelbach has a bad runs created plus or like bad stats against sliders, so like I don't want to use him. It's like, okay. So I went in and I talked about how the pitcher is just bad in general, and then I talked about how pitch type analysis is silly. So what do I mean when I say the pitch type analysis is silly? So if somebody is saying that some random hitter, let's call it Daniel Vogelbach in this situation, has a strikeout rate of 45% and like a runs created plus of 1 against sliders, right? Like, let's just say that he looks really, really bad against sliders. So, okay, that's fine. But it doesn't really encapsulate enough of what happens in the game in order to take it seriously. Even at a 52% rate like this pitcher was throwing, it still does not have a significant enough impact on how we predict what is going to happen in the game for you to forego correlation and projection and all of the other things that go into a model, right? So not very many models that I can think of utilize pitch type analysis and like specific micro pitch type analysis in the models. One, it's exceptionally hard to do, and two, it's kind of foolhardy. So let's take a look at something here. I built up a little spreadsheet here where we're going to be looking at two different things, right? So we're going to be looking at an overall view of a pitcher's split of their pitches, and then a per batter view, All right. So let's take that pitcher specifically. The pitcher was Matt Swarmer, I think, who sucks. Like the reason why this all came up is just because this pitcher sucks, and it's like, yeah, you should attack him, and people were trying to find reasons not to attack him with certain hitters. It's like, if a pitcher sucks, mostly just attack them. But I digress. So let's say, and he had about a 42% in the zone rate, and I'm actually looking at Joe Musgrove's stats, but we're going to look at Swarmer here. So I think he had like a 45-55 split or something. All right. So that's what we have here. And then let's say that he's going to throw, let's say just as a baseline, he throws 100 pitches. Okay. So that's going to show that he's going to throw, and his in the zone percentage, right, is 40%-ish. So again, this was looking at Joe Musgrove, but he was about the same. He was about 41-42%. So if out of 100 pitches, 42 of them are in the zone, right? So we'll consider those hittable pitches. He's throwing 42 hittable pitches in the entire game that you can actually do some damage with. That means that he's going to throw 19 fastballs in the game that are hittable and 23 sliders in the game that are hittable. So already, just looking at the overall view of this, right, we have a pitcher who, at most, and 100 pitches is pretty generous for somebody like Matt Swarmer who really sucks. Realistically, this should be something more like 70, right? So now we're looking at 29 total hittable pitches and 13 fastballs and 16 sliders. Already, you're looking at something where you're trying to make an assumption of how good a team can be against 16 individual pitches or 13 individual pitches. If you're looking at a team against sliders and you're saying that you want to make an assumption of their skills against 16 individual pitches in a game, you probably shouldn't be doing that in the first place. But I'll talk about that here in a little while. Like, I think that team level is more useful than hitter level. And the reason for that, and you'll see that here in a second. So let's take that now and say per hitter, right, or per batter. So in the same way that we built this up, we're going to put in a single at-bat, right? So this is just one at-bat. Let's assume 7 pitches in an at-bat. 3 of those pitches, on average, are going to be hittable. 1 of them will be a fastball that's hittable. 2 of them will be a slider that's hittable. So again, now what we're saying is that you want to take long-term stats of Daniel Vogelbach and put it up against 2 pitches in an at-bat and try to make assumptions off of it and try to like pull things that are really meaningful from it. I work in small samples at PayDirt, and I don't even think that this is a worthwhile sample. So okay, let's say, all right, well, but James, it's more than just 1 at bat, right? Like Daniel Vogelbach is probably going to have 3 at bats. Okay, sure, cool. So let's make this 21 pitches then. So now we have 9 total hittable pitches. We have 4 hittable fastballs and 5 hittable sliders. And these are making some assumptions about overall. Very likely he's going to be seeing less hittable sliders that are going to end up either in the shadow or in the chase box that are not really hittable. So this is probably something more like 4 and 4. So that's 4 total pitches in an entire game that you're saying, oh, well, you know, we have to throw this guy out because he can't hit sliders. And it's like, 1, it's 4 total pitches against that starting pitcher. And that is assuming that this starting pitcher goes through like 5-6 innings, right? If Matt Swarmer just gets destroyed, it doesn't even matter. Now you're going into the bullpen and all that stuff just gets thrown out the window. 2, bringing in the bullpen, we can't measure that, right? Like, we don't know who they're going to put out there. We don't know if it's going to be they're in a lead and they're going to put out one of their long relievers or a bridge guy, or they're getting crushed by the Pirates and they're putting out their trash relievers that they don't really like care about, or they're like trying things out. We don't know what the pitch mix is at that point once they get into the bullpen. So then this gets thrown out the window entirely again. So this kind of analysis where you're saying that I'm going to use somebody or I'm not going to use somebody based on a certain type of pitch, even in a very extreme example like Matt Swarmer, it's still just an exceptionally small sample that I think generally needs to be ignored. That's why I say that it's silly. So, okay, this was the Matt Swarmer example, right? I said that I was looking up Joe Musgrove, and the reason why I was looking up Joe Musgrove is because I wanted to give, again, a more realistic example, right? So Matt Swarmer was extreme because he only has 2 pitches, and he basically splits it 50-50. But what about a situation like Joe Musgrove, right? Like, what if this was a situation where you had a, and this is cutter, curveball, changeup, right? Yeah. Okay, so say that you had a situation where it was Joe Musgrove, and you were saying, okay, well, I think that this is, again, we'll just use Daniel Vogelbach. He's terrible against sliders. So Joe Musgrove is actually a good pitcher. We can say that he's going to go 90 pitches into a game, right? So now he has 38 hittable pitches. 11 of them are fastballs, 11 of them are sliders, 6 of them are cutters, 7 of them are curveballs, and 3 of them are changeups. If we extrapolate that down to 21 pitches, now we have 3, 3, 1, 2, 1. So any of these things, you can see any of these pitches in an at-bat. Any of these pitches are going to be the ones where he gives up something that is worth hitting and actually can give something good to Daniel Vogelbach, right? This split across these pitches, if you want to say that his 3 pitches that he will see in all 3 of his at-bats are a reason not to use a player, rather than looking at the now 6 pitches that are not a slider because he has a pretty decent split, it just doesn't make sense. Like, when you break it down this way, I think that you can see that there's really no reason to be using a 3-pitch sample to be breaking down whether you should be using a hitter against a pitcher or not. I think that short samples can be actionable. I think that stuff like this, you're basically just trying to find a way to say what you want to happen, right? Like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't use Daniel Vogelbach in this situation, you can say, haha, look how bad he was against sliders. That's why I didn't use him. But it's not really the reason why he did bad. Most likely the reason why he did bad is because of reasons around just that thing. That there's just so much more that goes into it. I think that this kind of micro-analysis is generally useless. So I want to talk through that. The other thing that I want to talk through really quick is something that is similar to that, and another stat that that is not going to be built into models, and that you can research on the side if you want a little bit more info on it, and that's BvP, right? So batter versus pitcher. This is basically like historical splits. This is just saying, Rougned Odor has had 20 at-bats against some pitcher, and 4 of them have been home runs, and 5 of them have been doubles. And he has like a 580 batting average against his pitcher or something like that, right? So BvP is generally silly, for sure. But I do think there is something to be said about understanding what a pitcher wants to do in a certain matchup or what a hitter wants to do in a certain matchup, right? So I think psychologically there is something to BvP. The issue is, and the reason why it's not included in models, is that we have no way to truly prove it one way or another. And if we can't prove something one way or another, and if we can't utilize it in a way that is consistent over the long term, if it's not something that is truly predictable, then we can't use it in models. I think that a lot of people get up in arms about BvP and how it's not something you should use, it's silly, it's dumb, whatever. I don't think that it's dumb. I think that mentally there's something to it. And in sports, there's a lot of the mental game that goes into the matchups that you're dealing with. So I think there's probably something to it. It's just that it's not something that we can put into models. It's not something that we can measure, so I choose not to utilize it in my models. But if somebody brings up BvP, I'm not going to tell them they're stupid. I'm just going to say, if you want to use it, that's fine, go for it. I don't have an opinion on it one way or another on a specific sample like that, but that's an example of a silly stat that I do think that you can research on your own time if you want to. I'm not going to say that it's going to give you better or worse results. Like I said, we don't have any way to measure it. We don't have any way to contrive it. So I don't know. But I think that's something that is in the same vein as this, which with pitch type stuff, where pitch type stuff you should not be paying attention to. And BvP, if you choose to pay attention to it, I'm not going to yell at you. The last point that I wanted to get here that I said that I would mention is team-based pitch type analysis. So that is one thing that I think is more usable, like a team specifically against change-ups or something. Like, say a team has a really strong run traded plus against change-ups, and they're going up against a pitcher that relies on his change-up to put guys away, right? Like, that kind of thing, that matters. We have a larger sample on it. We're going to see more of those pitches overall against individual hitters. If it's their put-away pitch, right? If it's a pitcher who uses their changeup all the time to put guys away, if a team is really good against that pitch, then yeah, there's something to that. It's harder to measure. It's not involved in a lot of models, but it is something that I think that you can look at. Where you run into trouble is when you try to use a sample size of like 5 years on it instead of just using the current year or even the last 2 years, because roster changes can make that kind of stuff really, really messy. So you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. In general, if you never use pitch type analysis, I think you're better off. It's just generally silly. So, yeah, that is this episode of Community Conversations. I just want to talk about kind of like auxiliary research things like pitch type and BvP, and just kind of force through the point that most models are already taking care of the things that are important and actionable. So if they're not included in those models, then you have to ask yourself why they're not included in those models. With pitch type stuff, it's because it's silly. With BvP, it's because we can't measure it. So there's a lot of stats that are like that. You could probably come up with plenty more. I'd be interested to hear more about the stuff that you research that that is not included in models that you see frequently. If you want to comment that below or reach out to me on Twitter. Again, my name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PayDirtDFS.com. We have a whole bunch of new free research sheets that are going up for baseball and PGA. And then all of the models, just $30 a month for every single sport. So if you want to go over there and grab a subscription, that'd be awesome. Regardless, like this video, follow, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later on. See you later.